Okay.
So when you start, then you should.
Yeah. It's the recording is
Okay. So
started. So
okay. So thank you, everyone. I am Shakir Elahi Muhammad Fahim. Okay. In the last two lectures, okay, I discussed some of the earliest Greek philosophers. I started from Thales. Okay, and I also discussed some of the philosophers like Anaximander, Anaximenes. Okay, and I also discussed Heraclitus and Pythagoras. Pythagoras. Okay, so today we are going to discuss a new one and his accomplish. I mean Parmenides and his student Zeno. So before I start discussing the philosophy of Parmenides, the Eleatic philosopher, so Parmenides, the Eleatic, I should give you first the context on which we can start our discussion. Okay. So mainly Thales was the first one, the first Greek philosopher who actually his solution to the problem, okay, his solution to the problem of reality was not something great, but he was great because he first raised the question. He first asked the first philosophical question. He asked, like, what constitute reality? Okay. So at that time, he thought it is water. And then came some other philosophers like Anaximander, Anaximenes. Some say it is fire, some say it is air. Okay, so they are just choosing some element from the nature and they are declaring that this is the base material out of which everything is created, whatever you say. But the thing is, one important discovery they made, and that is that uh, quantity actually is the responsible thing of quality. I mean, whatever quality you see in the nature, it is coming from quantity. That means some things are condensed, some things are rarefied, some things are not that much condensed, some things are going away from each other. So this kind of condition actually creates different kind of quality. Okay, so these were some of the primitive ideas of the first philosopher. Okay, then came someone very serious. Okay, we can call him the first. We can say that he was the first philosopher among the Greek, of course, who genuinely tried to solve problems. Okay, so his importance is not only asking question, he also tried to give some answer. He's Heraclitus. Heraclitus said that everything is changed. The only true thing that you can say about nature or reality is that it is changing, and it is not only changing, it is never fixed. Okay, so there is nothing which is a being. The only true reality, only true statement that we can say about reality is it is becoming. It is always constantly becoming. Okay, there is no other thing. Everything is in a state of flux. Nothing is fixed. So in that case, we can say we have, I mean, if you follow his philosophy, if you think he's right, then you'll have to say that we cannot say anything about the reality because we don't have anything which is static. So whatever you say about a thing, reality, whatever you say about reality, that will not stay for not for a minute, not for a second, not for a nanosecond. Okay, so we cannot say anything about reality. The only thing you can say about reality is that it is ever changing. Okay, so this is the one constant which is always true. And of course, Heraclitus believed in pluralism. Okay, he believed in different kind of thing. I like he believed in change. That means he believed in space, time, and everything. Okay, so he was a pluralist, like Pythagoras. Okay, Pythagoras was mainly a mathematician, of course. He played with the numbers and came up with an astonishing idea that everything is number. I mean, he tried to say, like, whatever you say in the nature, you can describe them, you can make relation with each other, with each of those objects with numbers. Okay, so number is the main thing. So if you say, if sometimes he used to say that marriage is three, okay, or God is one. So I mean, he used to give a number to each and everything. That the significance of his idea is this: that whatever relation you see in the nature, okay, in reality, you can express them with the use of number. You can say like what is the difference between you and me? You can express that in number. You can say like how tall I am, how tall you are. Okay, so everything, even quality, of course, every quality is coming out of number. Okay, so you can express the quality with a number. You can say like this color is this much pixel or something. So everything can be expressed in number. At the end he said that the reality is nothing but a number. So this was his idea. Okay, so this is what we already dealt in detail, so we are not going into detail now. So Heraclitus and Parmenides, they were pluralist philosopher. They believed that there is no, they were not monists. They didn't say that there is just one reality and no, uh, uh, yeah. So you might say, I mean, Pythagoras or Heraclitus, they believed in multiple things. He didn't say that there is just one reality. He was not a monist. Okay. Then came another philosopher named Parmenides. Parmenides had tremendous idea. He changed the whole thing. Heraclitus used to say that everything is changing, and Parmenides suddenly is saying that nothing changes. And we cannot say nothing, we cannot say anything about reality except just one thing, and this one thing is that it is. He believed in a being which is a being and which exists. He could only say that it is and nothing else. There is just one being, and being is something which is not non-being. It is being and it exists, it is, and we cannot say anything about it. Because whatever if you want to say something about reality, you will have to say like how long it is, how short it is, what color it is, whatever object you say, you'll have to give some quality. But he didn't believe in plurality. He wanted to say that there is just one being and it is, and becoming is illusion. Nothing becomes. It is the polar opposite of Heraclitus. He was the opposite of Heraclitus. He is saying like nothing is becoming. Everything is fixed and it is already there forever. Like nothing comes into being, nothing's go out of being. Right. So this was his philosophy, but he has some good logic, very tricky one. So let's see what was his logic. Okay. He said like there is just one being. Okay. And that being cannot change. Why? Because how change can come? Change, something can alter being by coming from outside being. Okay. So nothing can create being. From nothingness, being cannot arise, right? From nothingness, being cannot arise. And if being arise from being, then we should not say that something is arising. I think we have some audience. Mr. Mobicel, can you hear me? Hello, Mr. Mobicel, can you just mute your volume so we
Can you
can
raise
talk?
your voice?
Yeah,
Can you raise your voice?
I'm trying to. Are you listening to
Do
me?
you hear me? Yeah, I'm listening to you.
Okay, can
Can you
you
hear me?
give me your name? Can you give me your name?
Sorry.
Can you give me tell
Pardon?
me your name, please? Your name, please, sir.
My name is Tumsani Lol.
Okay. Can you
Can you
hear
hear me?
me? Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you. We just started talking.
Yeah, I can hear you as well.
Yeah. I was talking about the philosophy of Parmenides. So I hope you will enjoy it. Okay. So please just mute your yeah sound so that I can talk.
Ah,
Huh?
ah,
There's quite a bit of background noise,
yeah.
Mr. I didn't catch your name. There's quite a bit of background noise, so you might want to mute your microphone so that you can hear the speaker. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. So there's quite a bit of okay, thank you very much. That's great. Okay, I'm also muting myself.
Okay. So what I was talking, Rubaiyat, you can unmute your ear, so it will be
You're
like
talking about
okay.
Parmenides' logic for why.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what was the logic behind Parmenides' belief that there is just one reality, and reality being just is, okay, and we cannot give any quality to it because there is no change in it, there is no becoming in it. He was the polar opposite of Heraclitus. He just said that there is just one fixed thing which is being, and it is like forever. Okay, I mean nothing. It will never be changed. Okay, so what was his reason why he believed that there is no change, there is no becoming, there is no space, there is no movement? Why he said that? His idea was like this. I mean, there is just one being. So if something new comes into being, then it must come out of nothing, right? Or some new things may come from being itself. So let's consider the first thing. I mean, how you can say that from nothing something is coming? So this is impossible. We cannot imagine that outside being, if there is a nothing, okay, from nothing being is arising, being is coming, which is absurd, which is impossible logically. It is a logical contradiction, of course. And at the same time, think about the other option. Being can arise out of being. If being is arising out of being itself, then actually no new thing is happening, right? Being remains being. So it is not actually something new. So what we can say that in being, there is no change, nothing new is coming into being, and nothing is going out of being, because outside being is just pure darkness. I'm just using a metaphor. I'm just saying that outside being is nothing, so nothing can come into being. So this is impossible. And if being comes out of being, that is not actual really, that is not something real. I mean you cannot say that something's coming out of being is a new being. It is being already. Okay. So that's why he said that being is being. We cannot qualify it. We cannot give any quality to it. We cannot describe it. We cannot predicate it. It is unchanging. And the world that we are seeing ahead of us, the external world that we are seeing, it is just pure illusion. Our ideas about change, our ideas about multiple things, our ideas about movement, all are illusions. Okay, so this is something extraordinary. So one thing we can say from this, Parmenides may be the first philosopher who recognized the difference or the distinction between sense perception and reason. He thought that sense perception can give us illusion, but if we can use our reason, we can find the reality. Okay, the problem is in his philosophy, there is very little description of that reality. He just saying that reality is one, it is unchanging, and another thing is said that it is finite. It is finite, and most of the historians of philosophy, uh, they say, I mean, according to them, Parmenides was a materialist. He was not an idealist. Okay, he just thought the reality is material because he even said that it is spherical. Okay, it is perfectly poised everywhere. In anywhere within being, there is a place where there is where the being is more condensed, or is there is no place where being is less condensed. Everything is perfectly poised everywhere, and it is a sphere. It is like a circle. Okay, so and no change is possible within that circle, and it is of course finite because outside being there must be non-being, which is not a being itself. Non-being just pure nothing. Okay, so there is just only thing which is being, and it is material. So we cannot say much, we cannot describe anything from this. We can have just one product or one thing, one reality which is material and which is spherical and which is finite. He had a disciple named Melissus. He was not that much important a philosopher. Okay, I want to say one thing. I forgot to give you this information, and that is Parmenides actually wrote two books. Okay, in one book, the name of that book was on the way of knowledge, the way of knowledge, and another book named on the way of opinion. Okay, so he actually tried to say how ordinary people believe about the reality in his book named On the Way of Opinion, because he thought these are just opinion, these are just illusions. And he wrote another book in which he described what reality is. Okay, reality is being unchanging and everything is false. So most of his philosophy consists of negation. He negated so many things. He negated movement, he negated phase, he negated change, he negated becoming, he negated quality, he negated plurality. Okay, so many things that other philosophers accepted, and he tried to give proof. Okay, he had one important disciple named Melissus. He was not a very, I mean, he was not as much famous as Parmenides, of course, but he believed everything that his teacher said. But he used to say that the reality, the being is not finite. Reality must be infinite. Can you hear me, Rubaya?
Yes, I can hear you. There's a
Okay,
slight period of a little bit of audio, but we didn't lose
yeah,
much.
okay, okay. So the thing is, Melissus believed that uh, the reality, the being is not finite, but it is infinite. Why? Because if there is just being, then outside being is nothing. So nothing is the boundary of being, right? So if nothing is boundary, then the being should be infinite. What do you say? If the boundary is nothing, and if you say there is no boundary, that means it is not bounded by anything. That means it is infinite. So that's why he said that the sphere, the shape is not something finite. The reality is infinite, and the rest of the thing in the rest of the philosophy of Parmenides, he agreed. Okay, so this is the story of Melissus, and then we can also talk about Parmenides' Parmenides' famous disciple Zeno of Elea. Okay, Zeno of Elea was a famous disciple of Parmenides. He didn't invent anything new. He was very smart. He was very smart philosopher. He was a logician, and all his life he tried to protect his master from the criticism of others. Okay, most of the general people, they used to ridicule. Okay, even Pythagoreans or Heraclitean fans, they used to ridicule Parmenides' thesis, that how can you say that nothing changes? Even when you are saying something, your words are changing. How can you say that nothing is changing? So, so here comes Zeno of Elea. He wrote one book which is not, which is lost. We cannot have that, but we can have some understanding of his cleverness from the writings of other philosophers like Aristotle and many others. In their books talked about Zeno of Elea. And Zeno was famous for his paradox. He used to create paradox to prove that if you believe in pluralism, your situation would have been even embarrassing. Okay, so if you are ridiculing us, we can also ridicule you, and in a better way. Okay, so he invented some paradox. One of the paradox, one of the paradox is the paradox of Achilles and tortoise. Okay, so tortoise and Achilles, they are running. They started a race. Okay, we all know that Achilles can run faster than tortoise, but somehow tortoise started his race earlier when, say, Achilles was sleeping. Okay, so tortoise advanced little bit. You can say he was advanced, and then suddenly Achilles find out that he is behind, so he also started running. So now the problem is this: how can Achilles, no matter how fast he can run, how can Achilles can cross tortoise? How can he do this? Because tortoise is already ahead of Achilles. So if Achilles wants to reach tortoise, he needs to minimize his distance. So first he needs to make the distance half, right? Say the distance between tortoise and Achilles is 10 meter. So um, in order to reach Achilles, tortoise, first he needs to minimize his distance, say 5 meter. But when he is 5 meter away, the time he will take to minimize his distance to 5 meter, in the same at the same time, within the same time, tortoise will not be fixed. He is also running. He is continuous, so he will move a little bit, at least a little bit. So the no matter how close Achilles comes, okay, no matter how close Achilles comes to tortoise, he actually can never cross tortoise, because tortoise will always have, no matter how little time, but always have some distance, because he is ahead. So he will always be ahead. I mean, no matter how fast Achilles is running, he cannot cross tortoise. Okay, so this is one of the riddle or paradox, whatever you say. Okay, so Mr. Freedom Peter, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
Okay, actually, I was talking about some of the paradox of Zeno of Elia. You remember? I think you are a student of philosophy. He was the
Yeah,
student
yes,
of
sir.
Parmenides, right? So I was actually discussing
Sir.
that. Okay, so Zeno had another paradox. He had 40 proofs. Okay, to 40 proofs that prove that there is nothing called becoming, there is nothing called change or anything. Okay, so this is how, this is one of the paradox. I can give you another paradox of Zeno. Zeno was saying, like, if you shoot an arrow in a particular direction, the arrow will take a flight, right? Say for example, arrow will go from A to B. Arrow will go from A to B. So the arrow is crossing the path. So if it is crossing the path, if the distance is this much, okay, so we can actually divide this distance into infinite amount of small fragments. Okay, so and if the arrow is taking flight, that means in each instant, okay, the arrow, when the arrow is taking flight, it will stop in each, if this is the line, if this is the line, so within this line, the arrow will stop infinite amount of time. Okay, and when the arrow is stopped, that means the arrow is static. So how can something is static can be movable? This is an absurd thing according to Zeno of Elia, because for in order to cross this path, actually the arrow needs to stop. Arrow needs to stop infinite amount of time. Okay, and when something is stopped, that means that is static. So how can the accumulation of stoppages can become a movement? So this is again a paradox. Okay, still philosophers are thinking about this paradox. Okay, we have some kind of solution. We can say, like, maybe the world is not, maybe Parmenides is right. There is no real, there is no real change of place. There is no change, real change. There is no real movement. But the thing is, the world is created anew every instant. It is continuously recreated by God or whatever you say. Okay, if it is like this, that means in every instant the world is collapsing and it is then again coming back. So maybe when the arrow is moving in one instant, when the arrow is here, okay, the world stops, and then again when it is again the world is recreated, the arrow, you will see arrow, the arrow is now here. Okay, it is not the continuation, it is something, I mean, the distance between this and this is not a continuation. I mean this is one creation and this is another creation. Okay, so there is no connection between this creation and this creation. Rubaiyat, are you understanding me? I'm kind of finding
Yes, I'm
problem.
following. I'm following, but I've made some I have some questions which I had asked.
Yeah,
We are sort of reaching to
Okay,
there.
let me just finish it. Let me just finish it. How much time we have, Rubaiyat?
We're at 8:35 p.m. now, so I guess we have like 25. I don't know how long you want to go.
Okay, if when the time is up, you can always come back. You can always come back.
Okay.
I mean, we have 40 minutes to record. After 40 minutes,
Yeah.
I mean, I think 5 minutes, 5 more minutes maybe.
Yeah, I think 5 more minutes. 4 minutes. Yeah, 4
Okay.
minutes.
Okay.
All
So, actually, I can talk a little bit more about Zeno. There are lots of proofs. Okay. But maybe for the time being, we can stop because all of those proofs are actually pointing out in just one truth, and that is change is impossible.
Yeah.
When you say change is impossible, that means there cannot be any multiple things, there cannot be space, cannot be movement. Okay.
Yeah.
So the one reality which is fixed, immobile, that is the ultimate truth. So now if you have any question, you can always ask me, Ubayya.
Yeah. Okay. So let's start at the very beginning of the lecture. We started with Parmenides. So you mentioned how he didn't really believe in plurality, right? That he
Yeah.
said there's only one reality.
Mm.
First question: did he take
Yeah.
that? Does he take that oneness of reality to be axiomatic, or does he deduce that
It
from?
is axiomatic actually. You see why? Because you and me both are part of being, right? So he used to see like everything, all the multiplicity, the whole world, the creation, everything is just one thing. They exist, so they are being. So
No, but
he,
okay.
yeah. You
Okay, so
understood?
so I kind of understood, but I still have a bit of follow-up question. For example, if he
I forgot to say one thing. I should tell you. And
Yeah.
he used to think like, specially it is finite. According to Parmenides, reality is specially finite, but temporally infinite. It means there is no
Okay.
change. There is no change, but a peculiar type of duration still exists, which is infinite. So temporarily it is infinite, but I mean spatially finite. So now you
So
can ask your question.
so like my sort of like a question here is that if he takes like reality, the oneness of reality, or his monism, if he takes that to be axiomatic, if he takes that as a a priori belief, then what is there to prove? I mean, where does his logic, like, I mean, he
Actually, he
takes that as a
didn't
belief.
want to prove anything. He actually tried to disprove a lot of things. He
So, for
just
example,
said,
what would he? So, one thing is that, he would say that how would change, like he would deal with the question of in his like worldview, there's no change, right? And so the question, the thing that he's trying to disprove, or prove, is that how change cannot come, right? How there is no change. So that's one logical movement he's making, right? So he takes being to be one, the oneness of being to be an axiom, and then he sort of says that from there,
according to him, there can be two major category, main category, being and not being.
being and
Something
not
can
being.
be a being and not being. So you cannot oppose him because everything that you say, you and me, we are being. That's for
Yeah,
sure. We exist. Okay.
yeah.
If you say that everything is being, then he is right. You cannot oppose him. And anything that is not being is nothing. So being or nothing. So if nothing cannot create being, then being, I mean the change that you see, that we see is within, is coming from being. So being begets being. So if being comes from being, change
Yeah,
is coming from being. Whatever you
right.
say, that is not a real change according to him, because it is already being. Being
is he,
cannot be being. Yeah.
so is he perhaps talking about only the aspect of being of things, the beingness of
Yeah.
things?
Yeah.
Because I mean,
Yeah.
you could say, okay, so whatever, like suppose this space, right? My hands are moving in this space. I'm
Yeah.
part of being. We're all part of being. But this,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, my hands are definitely moving in space.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how can he say that it's not, like, something is not changing? Unless to say that the status of being is not changing, but
He
that's
will, he
nothing.
will say, he will say that you are saying that my hands are moving because you see it. You have that idea because of sense perception, and he will tell you that these are all illusion, because when I use logic, I don't see any change. I don't see
Okay,
any change
all right. So
because
sense,
nothing can come out of being. Okay, because out of being, outside of being is nothingness, and anything that any change that you see within being is not actually change. But being cannot, if being produces newer being, that is not a new thing, it is already is being, part of being. So if you think like him, okay,
right.
that
It's very hard to
then
think like like it's
yeah.
kind of, it's not very, like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
there,
actually the tricky thing is, he is just using just one category.